Howdy, this is Sailor the Piper Man. Piper the Sailor Man. If I'm looking in the wrong direction, is I changed the angle of my cell phone. I'm looking. I gotta turn this on. You might hear a little sound. It's up in the 90s already here on the island of Puerto Rico, and today I'm feeling the Spaniard side of me has come out today, as I like Spanish music, flamenco music, but I also have Irish. I'm here with my DC Butch Shoquin. Very nice pipe. I love this pipe. It's got this really nice, almost Danish look to it. And I hope you, my friends, I'll have a wonderful day today. As I'm just gonna have a relaxing day. And gonna be studying some history. I want to tell you a story. There was a story about one of my ancestors. His name was Diego. Diego, in the late 14th century, just a couple of years, he was born like a decade before. He was like 12 years old. Diego didn't come from a well-to-do family, but he was a peasant. And Diego was Spanish and Moor, Spanish and Arabic. We had a lot of Arabic pictures. If you look at a picture of Goya, the painter, he had that Spaniard conquistador look, but Arab, very dark skin, not light skin. Diego being poor, a peasant stock. When his father died, you would have to be my grandfather. They lost all their lands to the feudal system. The lords came in and confiscated the land because you were given land in feudal society. You were given land to work the land, and from that land you pay off your earls, the dukes, the counts, and you keep the land. You live the land, and the percentage of that went to those in power. When the mother fell ill, Diego's mother fell ill. He couldn't do that anymore. So they had to leave the land. They couldn't keep the land. They couldn't produce the income necessary to please these lords. So these lords are real cruel. You know, the way they treat the peasant, just like the same today. If you don't have the money, you know, you're thrown out of a rented home or whatever. And so that was what Diego had to deal with at a very young age. But they moved to the south of Spain from León, Spain, which is up in the north. And Diego and his family found work. His sister found work in a nunnery. His mother found work in a lord's house, a very famous house, baron or whatever, nobility. And it just so happens that Diego, that home that she worked in, they were able to find Diego some work as a guard. The family did at a shipping village, and a shipping village meaning there were villages that were constructing ships. They found a job there as being a security, watching over the tools and things like that. He did that so well that the owner of the shipping village asked him, gave him a salary, said, "What would you like to do?" He says, "I would like to build ships, learn how to build ships." So my great grandfather, eighth grandfather, was given the opportunity to learn how to build ships. He crafted ships. So what ended up happening was he became very good. He built some of the early ships for the Spanish Armada. And a war ensued in Spain between the Catalonians and other Spaniards. You had the Basques, you had different, even though it was called Spain, there were different groups. You had the Castilians, you had the Visigoths, you had the Iberians, you had different tribal groups. And they were descended from Irish. They had come over from Ireland, they spoke Spanish, and so they made their way south to Barcelona, the shipping docks, shipping villages. So Diego began earnestly working real hard until finally a captain befriended him. A captain that had been a pirate, corsair, privateer. This was the English word for it. And so he would contract himself. He was the owner of his own ship. He would contract himself to whatever power, whether for shipping, transporting, what have you. His ship was a ship that was always contracted. So when the war broke out, the war broke out between Spain and England, and it always did, or England and France, or France and Spain. Diego was good enough. After shipping, he learned to sail, and he learned about navigation. He took to sea. But Diego was, at that time when he took to sea, he had traveled to Portugal, so he joined the Portuguese sailors, and he began offering himself as a sailor under contract to sail the western coast of Africa. Well, something happened there. A war ensued between the Arabs and the African tribal groups, and obviously Diego was involved in the slave trade. That his ship was marooned down by the Ivory Coast. So the locals really liked him. He learned to speak the language, the native language, African language, tribal language, Igbo, and he was able to get African fishermen and African shipbuilders to build the ship. He already knew all he had to do was get the manpower, and he built a small ship, about half the size of one of these Spanish galleons. And once he built the ship, as the story goes, the oral history was, he set sail with a ragtag group of Arabs, Islamic mercenaries, from what they said, it was a cast of characters. And he began sailing into the Caribbean. And what ended up happening in one of the incidents was, as he was coming close to the island of Puerto Rico, there was an English ships that decided that they were going to have a blockade against Puerto Rico and not allow any ships from Spain reach port. So they would have battles, or they go on board and confiscate the Spanish galleons. But since he had a smaller boat, and he was the maker of the boat, he can get that boat to move quick. So that one incident was English began coming after his boat as he was trying to arrive off the coast of Puerto Rico. And his boat, according to what my great uncle was saying, looked a lot like a catamaran. Two sides, and so it moved really quick, carried 25 men. And so the bombardment took place. You can imagine out at sea maneuvering that. So he was able to go twice as fast as those galleons, so he got away. And he took the diagrams of the ships that he built, and he reached what's called Santa Isabela. That's in Ponce. And once he arrived in Ponce, the governor of Ponce was Ponce de Leon. He was the founder of the city of Ponce, Ponce de Leon. He arrived there, they saw him, they realized he was a Spaniard. They brought him to the administrative office, and one of the navigator ships wanted to know how he got through the blockade. And Diego told him, well, I built the ship a certain way for speed. So he began under contract, Ponce de Leon, building similar ships like that. And Diego, for many, many, many years in Ponce, became a shipbuilder, and he was able to get his citizenship. And Diego, because he knew so much about the trade winds and stuff like that, was often contracted to travel from Puerto Rico to Venezuela, to travel to Colombia, and in the other season, the trade season, like the winds right now would go from Africa to west, so he would catch the trade winds, and then when the season changed, he would catch the trade winds going up to back to Puerto Rico, to Cuba. So oftentimes he would go from Puerto Rico to Venezuela, from Venezuela, Colombia. He would then turn, go back out to sea, and go to Cuba. I don't know what he did in Cuba. I guess, bringing supplies and things like that. And then he would circumnavigate onto the Atlantic, come back around, catch a trade until he got back to Puerto Rico. And so he, without realizing, he created one of the first trade routes in which he actually circled the large Antilles to the less Antilles, landing on Colombia, Venezuela, trade, and go back to Cuba. So he learned so much, and he knew so much, that the Crown wanted him to be a privateer, and he ended up being like, his ship was like a spy ship, like an intelligence ship. He would go out there as a normal merchant, but because they couldn't catch him, he could detect what ships were coming and going at any time. If there were any warships, there were a fleet of ships, and would warn the government of Puerto Rico. I didn't know that they honored him for saving San Juan from Francis Drake. The war ensued, and they were able to finish off Francis Drake. So there was a war with Francis Drake, and he was heavily involved in strategizing and preparing the ships. And so I just wanted to tell that story, how a young man grew up from poor and became very influential in the history of the island of Puerto Rico. That happened to be one of my great grandfathers, Diego Carlos Santiago Figueroa de Leon. So that's big ups to a boy who had dreams of shipbuilding, being a seaman, being a captain, to actually helping a nation against another nation. And he lived a long life. He lived to 101. He had finally settled, went inland, and had children, probably when he was in his 40s or something. He had 12 children. And so the Spanish crown gave him land, and the children became farmers. And so that was the story of one of my great grandfathers. Well, this is Sailor the Piperman, Piper the Sailorman, with a story of my family history. I guess I got that little itch of going out to sea too. So you guys take care. Have a wonderful day.